Hi, my name is Matthew Camp. I'm Director of Government Relations at Teachers College. Welcome to everyone. We'll be taking action today on LGBTQIA and equality in the very end of Pride Month. And we're so excited to have you here. I'm joined by Joey Yui. Hey, Joey, how's it going?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Matt. Hi, everyone.
Hey everyone, and so Joey's my co-facilitator. Alana Crosby from Grad Student Life, unfortunately, is not feeling well. So we're sending her our good vibes to get healthy soon. And we will be recording this for folks in the future in the online world to continue to take action. If you're able to turn on your camera, that's great. If you can't, no problem. So we're here I'll just give you a quick kind of overview of what we're going to do today. And it's going to be pretty brief because we're all busy. We have to get out and vote if it's primary day in your neighborhood, very important. So the run of show here is just kind of a welcoming, we'll each participant, because we're a cozy group, will get to share a little bit about themselves, where they're from. Joey will go over some community guidelines. One thing we can do as we're getting started is just put in you could kind of rename yourself. If you click your self view, the three dots in the upper right, you can put your pronouns. He, in my case, he, him. So you could take care of that as part of our guidelines. So do guidelines, and then we'll do asset accounting, which is a really cool way of building our strengths and really understanding what strengths and abilities we have right here, right now. And Joey and I will kind of do that together. And then lastly, we'll write some letters to Congress, or you could even do phone calls and tweeting if that's your thing too. So I've spoken enough. I'll hand it off to Joey to kind of welcome people, check in where we're from, and then do guidelines.
Yeah. So hello, everyone. My name is Joey. I just recently graduated from Teachers College with a master's in international education. And I've been working with Matt for the past 1.5 years on government relations work. And I'm really glad to be here today to talk more to you all about just the Pride workshop, and then along with talking about the Equality Act. But before we do that, I just wanted to put in the chat a link to our community guidelines, and just wanted to emphasize like some important guidelines to think about as we discuss in today's discussion. So if you're able to click on the link, you can. I'm not able to share my screen at the moment, but some of the guidelines that we have for you today are being present, being an active listener, and actively contributing where you can. And now, I can try now. Let me see. I'm unable to share the screen right now, but yeah, it's okay. So actively listening and actively contributing, respecting pronouns. If you have any preferred pronouns that you go by, thanks, Matt. Asking for clarification and listening respectfully. This topic may be new for some folks, so if you're curious or confused by anything, feel free to put a question in the chat or just unmute yourself. And then also identify where your learning edge is and try to push it to however comfortable you feel. And if there's any dissenting opinions or any ideas where you feel you may not agree with, or you maybe have more curiosity about, feel free to challenge the idea and not the person as well. And if you have any others, feel free to add it in the chat as well, and then we can add it towards our slides. Yeah, and with that, does anyone have like any questions about the guidelines or wanted to add anything else to the chat about the guidelines?
So I can't figure out how to change my name real fast, but my pronouns are he, him.
Great. Awesome.
I have the same problem. I think there's a permission issue about being allowed to change that at the moment. And I'm she, her.
And my pronouns are they, them, theirs. And Hamna, did you want to share your pronouns today and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Hamna. I'm just here for the summer at Teachers College. My pronouns are she and her.
Great, awesome. And it looks like we're being joined by Jim. Hi, welcome. We're just going over introductions. And
Hey, how's it going?
good, how about you? Yeah, and we're just going over our name and then our pronouns as well, if you'd like to
Okay.
share, Jim.
Jim, and it's he, him.
Great. Oh, great. And there's more people joining us on the chat. That's amazing. Oh, all right. Well, spoke too soon. And I just wanted to get a field for where everyone is signing from today.
Oh, okay. So I'm signing in from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, great.
Yeah, because I used to work in the New York City Department of Education in Brooklyn, but then I just hit major depression and I couldn't work anymore. So, but like I said to myself, part of I used to always attend the athletic events and educational events here at Teachers College. So
Great. Awesome. And what about everyone else?
I'm also joining from Brooklyn.
Awesome.
In New Jersey.
New Jersey, great.
I'm in Harlem.
Harlem. I'm also in Harlem as well.
Cool.
In Massachusetts, about on my way down to New York this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, great. So it seems like we're all in the East Coast today, specifically in the Northeast. And thank you so much for sharing your names and your pronouns as well. And now we're going to be going over asset accounting. So Matt will be taking us on that journey now.
Sure, definitely. Thanks so much, Joey, and thanks again. Welcome, folks. So asset accounting is almost like something you hear, like, what is this? You know, an accountant would talk about that. How is that related to politics? But it's really recognizing the power that we do have. You know, in education, a lot of the times the job of the teacher is to educe, right? And to educe means to bring forth, to bring out what somebody is already aware of, already capable of. And it's a teacher's or facilitator's job to kind of elevate that. So just by sitting here, we're alive and breathing. We have, you know, that's amazing to recognize that, to be grateful for, you know, life itself. And we're able to vote. And even if you're not a US citizen, you still have plenty of civic actions at your disposal. As a resident or citizen of a country, we have many, many people working for us. And whether or not you voted for the person who's currently your elected official, they work for you because you're their constituent. And that's something we're going to highlight in our letter writing and say, hey, I'm your constituent. I live in your district. The tool we're going to use is going to help us identify the district. In the Senate, it's kind of easy because there's 2 senators per state. They represent the whole state. In the House, rather, it's a little more nuanced because of you know, the very specific district boundaries they draw, and you probably heard of gerrymandering, that those district lines actually move pretty frequently. So the point is, you've got a senator or 2 senators, you've got a House representative, you've got a mayor, a city council member, a state senator, state assembly person, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and I'm running out of fingers here. So there's multiple people who represent you. Those are some of your assets just by being here. And you can write letters and do phone calls to all those folks. I used to open up those letters. I worked at 2 different US Senate offices, and people would write to us. They would email. Back in the day, it was faxes or even carrier pigeon, whatever method that people would send notes to us. We had to read them and document them. We would actually log them into computer system. At the end of the day, the chief of staff would take a look at what people are saying about a particular issue, and then they would relay that message to the senator. You know, you might wonder too, what's the point of writing to a senator who might already agree with you? You know, if we're here in the Northeast, LGBT, you know, rights are pretty robust. I think the governor of New York actually just signed something today or yesterday, which is great. But the point is to not neglect home base, to make sure that our electeds, we're actually holding them accountable. And you could even thank them too. Again, being on the staff side of this stuff, it goes a long way to recognize the staff's day-to-day efforts, because they do so much of the work. They don't have expertise on every issue. They have to be experts on a million different issues. So part of our job is to, going back to education, we're a teachers college, to educate about you as a constituent, what you're going through, what your aspirations are, or your hopes are. And then there might even be an opportunity for them to get back to you. So a good representative will not just listen, but also ask questions and want to know you as a teacher, you as a health activist, you as a, whatever role you have as an artist. There's so many people at TC who have different amazing capabilities. They'll come back to you to elevate your voice, and they could even share your story with a colleague who's more on the fence about an issue, right? So not neglecting home base is super important. So, and assets, I mentioned letter writing is one way of taking action, phone calls. We've all probably done things one way or the other. So has anybody here met with, like, this is one of the I want to say the gold standard, but one of the harder kind of labor intensive things to do is meeting and talking with an elected official. Has anybody done that in a formal setting, not just like seeing them on the street? So most people. Pamela, would you like to share what that experience was like? Yep.
I had, I'm in New Jersey and I have a representative who is named Chris Smith, and he is anti everything that I believe in. And so I went to Washington to just wander into his staff room and try to have a conversation with him. And he didn't come out, but his staff spoke with me. And they let me see that the only thing on his wall is a picture of the Virgin Mary. And that's it. His whole office is around that. And we didn't have a productive conversation, even though I had planned to be very open and, curious, and all the things I teach about how to interact with people and maybe influence, but didn't work out that way.
Okay, so you might not be able to persuade someone in the moment, but you definitely get props for showing up, for making the effort, and being present. Like, I think that was on Joey's, our community guidelines, right? Is being present in a way that means you're not just, listening and watching, but you're showing up again and again. And persistence is definitely a virtue here in the political world. I think we had Jonathan raise his hand. Do you want to share a story?
Sure, yeah. So I am originally from Tennessee, and I went to Washington for a freshman experience trip. And at the time, I don't know if they do this anymore, probably post-COVID, they don't. But at the time, the two senators did Tennessee Tuesday. So anybody that was a Tennessee resident could come to this session with them and their staff and speak with them. And at the time when I was in school, our senator was Lamar Alexander and Bob Corker. My main focus was wanting to talk to Lamar Alexander because of his experience with the Bush administration. And it was very much like met him, got to shake his hand, asked me my interest, and then it was like on to the next one. It was just, I wasn't able to talk about specific policy or ask questions about No Child Left Behind or anything like that. But yeah, very light meet and greet, and that was it. That was my experience with him.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for sharing that. Definitely, there's the whole range of experiences that we hear for people having meetings briefly with the member themselves or with their staff. As I get paid to do this on behalf of Teachers College, to go down to Washington and Albany and City Hall and meet with staff and have a meeting. I've had meetings in the hallway, or in the lobby. You hear the term lobbyist, it's because a lot of the work gets done in the lobby. So even if professionals, like that's a lot of the times our experience too. So those are pretty typical things. And we have to be unwavering in our persistence to keep showing up. So other ways of, again, asset accounting, figuring out what we've done. Anybody write letters to Congress or do phone calls? couple hands, and Hamna and Jim, if you're able to.
Yeah, I've sent letters to different state senators.
Thank you. And yeah, you could, there's not that many of us, so you're able to speak up or just, raise your hand, because the next couple will be rapid fire. So there's letter writing, wonderful. There's also petitions. Anybody, show of hands, do like petitions or, yeah. What about voting? Anybody? Everybody's voted, yeah. Great. So at our disposal, we've got, or there's also rallies. Anybody go to like a rally, something like that? Yeah, a lot of active people here. And what am I missing? Any other form of action you've taken?
You mentioned earlier phone calls, and I've done a
calls.
phone call before.
Nice. There is political science research that shows causally that phone calls do move the needle in legislation. So Joey, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I also just wanted to say community events are also really important. There's lots of city officials and sometimes even state or federal officials that attend these events and want to talk to people, and it's really like, it's beneficial because they're bringing their office to you in a way, and you're able to talk to them and hear them. Just recently, this past weekend, the Pride March happened. So I'm sure that there were a lot of officials who showed face at the event and got the opportunity to speak with many constituents that were there. So that's also a really important part, and also really impactful as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And in a place like New York, it is the biggest city in the country, but especially in the city council level, they're neighbors. They're in the neighborhood. They have a presence, and it is a great way to bump into people. There's also community boards. I highly recommend people check out, if you're in the city, your community board or your town council. If you're out of the city, great ways of getting involved. And I think it's just important to remember all these different ways, because it's, civic action and democracy is not a spectator sport. It's not just once every 4 years and hanging, our fates on those big Supreme Court decisions or those big presidential elections. School boards too. Thanks, Joey, for adding to that. Yeah, TC certainly. We've had people run for office. We have alumni, including Shirley Chisholm, who have held elected office before. So, there's lots of things available at our disposal to on the kind of obvious civic level to take action. And I think now Joey is going to take us a step deeper here about your particular strengths, right, and your stories, because the word advocacy, again, thinking about the Latin word, is to vocate, to speak out. So, we've co-hosted entire workshops on the art of storytelling and how storytelling with Christina Torres, an amazing doctoral student, who's helps folks, kind of find their voice and share their stories to Congress. Welcome, Clifton. Thanks for coming today. So we'll go around the room. Joey, I think you're going to guide us on their next steps here.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Yeah, so the power of storytelling is really important. And I think especially as part of the LGBTQ community, I myself have my own lived and personal experiences of, being a queer person and also facing, discrimination at many parts of my life, just being a queer person. So I think it's really important to take those struggles that we faced and share them and put them into light, because, while these laws and policies may be out there into place, there's all these data that's out there showing these big trends and whatnot. It's also the stories that, add more nuances and subtleties and make those numbers and those laws come alive in a way, because it really impacts us. And, I have worked for many years to share my story little by little, depending on my comfort level. And it's really important to just, take whatever you're comfortable sharing, and, whether that's with your group of friends or whether that's with people you've never met, such as politicians and state officials and whatnot, and have your story out there. And I just wanted to get gauge within the room, like if anyone is part of the community and would like to share any experiences and whatnot as well, if you're comfortable sharing.
Sure, I'll start. So like I had mentioned earlier, I grew up in Tennessee, specifically in Knoxville, which was nice because it's a school town. So there's definitely a little pocket of like-minded individuals, I would say. But I grew up mostly around conservative Christians, and I grew up in a conservative Christian household. And coming to terms with my sexuality and my identity, like as a child and into a young person, was never on the table, right? It was always something that was not talked about, not addressed. And if it was talked about, it was in a demonizing, derogatory way. So it was just never discussed. So I didn't have the opportunity to develop early on. And it was more of like a repressed and shame behavior that I kind of created. But as I got older, I was able to meet people and branch out and go to school, which helped a lot, go away to school, and kind of come to terms with my sexuality. And I do identify as gay. And I think a big push for me was having teachers at my university that I attend be open and listening, and some even saying, you know, I'm in the same boat, like I'm lesbian, or, you know, someone else. And those conversations were amazing because it was the first time that I had an educator in my whole life be like, hey, like, yeah, this is normal, this is great, like no big deal. And me too, like I'm also in that community. And so like seeing legislation like Don't Say Gay in Florida is really kind of hard, because like I know what it was like being a kid in a conservative state and not being able to develop or express myself. And I think that's where a lot of my passion comes from now for the community, is to be able to have opportunities and experiences like that.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Jonathan. And as you were talking, I saw that I listened to the part where you were able to gain more friends and networks and people that are also within the same community as you. And going back to what Matt was talking about with asset accounting, I think for me with that word asset, I also think about who you know, right? And who you meet as well. And taking, you know, like the backgrounds and, you know, the lived experiences and putting that into like advocacy efforts and, you know, moving the needle together and moving the needle forward with more people that are like you. So thank you so much for sharing that, Jonathan. Is there anyone else that wants to share? If not, we can also move on to the next portion.
Yeah, and we realize, you know, a lot of this is personal and sometimes it might be painful. So we're totally, you know, that's up to you. And I think that we can draw upon our lived experience and even just synopsize it or condense it in a way. The legislator, at the minimum, you can say, hey, I'm a constituent. You can say, hey, I'm a teacher. You know, hey, I'm someone who identifies as a certain way. And that is enough. You know, you don't have to dig any deeper than that. But in our challenges, there are often strengths, right? And there are often real assets, you know, in education, especially at a place like Teachers College, we look at an asset-based or strength-based approach rather than a deficit-based approach to teaching. And so for politics, it's really no different. It's building from your strengths. Okay, so the floor is open for anybody who wants to share.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I
Yeah.
was in Hell's Kitchen probably, oh man, it was when the basketball was still going on, so it must have been recently, like 2 weeks ago, and I was on 9th Ave. I'm heterosexual, but I'm walking down 9th Avenue near probably about 48th, and there's that area, there's a large LGBTQ population, and there was these two men, I believe they were gay, and there were a pack of 4 men started harassing them, and one of them spit at the other one. So I try not to usually in this day and age get in the middle, but I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. And it wasn't that late at night. And there was the bar, Mickey Spillane's, was still open. So I figured people would see from there. So I said, hey, cut it out. And then they started saying stuff to me, and I just called the police. And I just said, okay, the police are on their way.
Wow.
And those 4 kids backed off. But I was like, two guys not minding their own business. And just because of the way they were dressing or holding hands, these other 4 decided that they were gonna start harassing them. And I was like, you can't do that. My mom and dad said you can't. If you stand by and watch, you're just as bad as the ones who do it. So
Right.
I like to think I'm being proactive in that respect.
Yeah, wow, thanks for sharing that. That's really powerful and definitely not easy, you know, to just jump in and put yourself maybe at risk, but there's definitely really value to intervening as a bystander, not just being a bystander. So lots of resources on that I think we could have a whole nother workshop on. I want to just be mindful of people's time to move us along to the bill of the day here, the Equality Act. So again, we do have a nice fact sheet brought to you by a non-profit think tank about what the bill does. And basically, it gets a lot of existing civil rights legislation up to speed. And I think, you know, for someone like me who's an ally, who's, you know, representing what Teachers College is all about and talking to government, we have to get government up to speed. And, you know, there was a study that just came out of UCLA Law School that was in Chalkbeat, and our professor from TC was quoted in it, actually talking about the increase in the number of trans students. And so our teachers that come out of this building, you know, need to know their students, need to know their culture and background and community, and be supportive of them. And so that's why there's this push-pull. We're not just responding to government, but we're encouraging it to get with the times. So the bill makes important updates to existing legislation and addresses employment, housing, credit, jury service, federally funded programs, which is money, public spaces, services, and religious liberty. And so the fact sheet that we're sharing is full of footnotes and endnotes. We also, you know, recommend people read the bill. So, you know, when you take action on legislation, the bills are long, and, you know, not many people actually read them, you know, save those legislative staff we mentioned. So in the chat, there's a link to the bill, HR 5, and it's kind of fun to decipher what all those things mean. It's kind of a puzzle. I don't know. I like doing that stuff. So we're moving fairly quickly here, but the bill, you know, assuming you're comfortable with its contents, makes these important changes and establishes equity for the LGBTQ community, because, as you know, there's been just embedded, you know, historic discrimination at all levels of government, and so this bill would make a big change. So the bill, if you go to congress.gov, you could see not only the text but also the actions. So the bill has been introduced and actually passed the House. So now it's up to the senators to pass it. And on Voter Voice, which is the software we're going to use to take action in a second, you'll be writing to your House representative and your senators. And that's fine to cover all bases, because, you know, bills do get sent back, or there's a new Congress coming up and they have to kind of start all over again, reintroduce it. So it's really important today for us to be on record. So I'm just going to drop in the chat our link. I think Jim was here last time we did something like this. It's a really cool new.
Yes, on gun control. Yep.
Welcome back. Yep. And so, oh, thanks, Joey. Joey's dropped it in the chat. I'll just share a screen if people are kind of curious to follow along at home. You can see our landing page with all kinds of important legislation to take action on. So we're going to click that first one. You have the link you have should take you directly there. So it says the Equality Act would codify clear and consistent protections against discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity at the federal level. So we're encouraging folks to tell their story. You could use or modify the language to the right, which we're giving credit for the Human Rights Campaign, which has been very active on this issue. So the language is adopted from them, but you could customize it as much as you want. So you could say, I am a constituent. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but something simple. Constituent in your district, and expect, hope that you will pass this bill. I would say, and in higher education, something a little more detailed. So take a few minutes to do that. Take a few minutes to read, the boilerplate down here. If you have trouble navigating, you hit the tab button on your computer. And you type your name and your address, it will populate your representative. So I'll do my New York, where I'm registered to vote. And jump in with any questions, send message, a verification code. So I'll stop sharing window, but yeah, it'll prompt you probably for a verification code. I'll zip, does anybody have any questions? And then I'll zip up so you could actually spend a few minutes reading this. Yes, sir, Jonathan.
I'm unable, I don't know if it's maybe a browser issue, but I'm unable to scroll to enter my info.
Yeah, so try the tab button. Does that help?
Yeah, tab on the form and then
That
you can
worked.
shift tabs.
All right,
Thank you.
nice. So I went back to my email, I typed in my verification code, and look, it said it's Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, Adriana Ospea, they all got it. You could also call, same thing, it'll just give you their switchboard. Definitely recommend doing both if you have the time. Anyway, I will put myself on mute so you could focus and customize your letter. Off you go. And when you are finished, no rush, but you could put a little thumbs up in your window. You can know where we're at. I'm already seeing 18 messages sent. This is amazing. So that, people who got the email probably already sent things. So in the background, we have a nice report. I see New York, California, Massachusetts. So we're building momentum.
Here's a question, Matt, if you have time. If not, it can be later.
Yep.
Are you able, since you live in Massachusetts and in New York, are you able to write to both? Are you only able to write like for both states, like representative for both states and districts? Are you only able to write for your like your primary district?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, the whole remote work thing has changed the dynamic a little bit. I would recommend writing or calling your legislator in the state you're registered to vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it sounds like you've got it done.
Can you tell me how to scroll down further? I don't know how to
The
describe
tab?
this. I was able to enter my story and my name and everything, and then
Yeah, the tab button, does that work for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great.
And you probably said that already. Thank you.
No, it's okay. All the time.
I was thinking what I was going to write. Prefix required.
Hmm.
Don't like that.
Yeah, I also had that issue, Pamela.
Yeah, come on.
So I used because I
MX. I'm going to use
yeah,
MX.
MX, yes.
Yeah, I got to do that. Sorry.
I wonder if that's something we could change in the back end.
Yeah, maybe we could look that up as well. And also with the scrolling.
Or the scrolling is annoying, yeah.
Oh, it won't let me do MX. It just came back. You have to do, oh, well, I can do doctor. Okay, that helps me.
I also got that as well for SYS office.
Huh.
Yeah. So Mr. Smith will be hearing from me again today.
Mm.
I would also recommend to share the link with your networks as well. So that way, like you can increase like the momentum and also like the amount of like representatives that get the message as well.
That's great. I'll do that immediately.
For sure, yeah. And I'll just show folks who are curious what the report looks like. So we've gotten, you know, not surprisingly, a kind of heavy New York set of messages here about California. Here's New Jersey. So we're having really national influence just in a short amount of time. You can see the states, pretty cool. Yeah, so does anybody want to share back what they wrote or leave it private? Up to you, take a minute or so.
I just talked about the fact that I don't write to them often, but this issue is so important to me. And as a parent of a non-binary person who has had every privilege in life, but suffers tremendously culturally in our and has faced discrimination because of their identity. So I live in an affluent part of New Jersey. It votes Republican all the time. And I don't think people understand that people right in their own community are suffering from the beliefs that they are enacting in their, and our legislator who does actively oppose anything like the Equality Act.
Yeah, and so thank you for sharing that. That's so important to hear your story and for the representative to hear your story. And a lot of times if you ask a lobbyist or an advocate what do they do, they'll say educate, which is sometimes surprising, you know, because we think, wait a minute, we're the School of Education, isn't that our job? And of course it is. But yeah, lobbyists, you know, you could say you could be a lobbyist for tobacco company or oil company or something. They're still educating. They're educating the member of Congress what their priorities are. They're the messenger. And so in the same way, you're the messenger. You know, people here today are the messengers of educating those representatives about what's going on in their community. They need that intelligence. They need that info to be a better representative. So there's a two-way, you know, dialogue that's happening. We're holding them accountable. So congratulations. This is the first time, just going back around, is this the first time that people have done this? I can't remember at the beginning. So we're seasoned here at letter writing.
Written read, I've never had it made so easy for me to do.
Oh, well, I'm
It's
glad.
usually this.
That's gratifying. That's good to hear. So you probably, I mean, I could basically guarantee that you'll get a message confirming that your representatives got this message. And it may be automatic, you know, kind of boilerplate. It may be tailored a little bit, depending. Again, you are free to follow up with phone calls. You could use word of voice to tweet if that's your thing. So congratulations, you know, you're now officially an LGBTQIA activist. I'm sure you have been already in lots of ways, but you have this additional certification as the writer of a letter to Congress to share your voice. So that's really gratifying, you know, that we're able to do this together in a little community. We're happy to take any other questions before we start closing up shop. Or comments.
Thank you for doing this. And I'm noticing that you're getting people involved in other issues too. So I think it's a wonderful service that you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a team effort for sure. Joey's been alongside government relations efforts for almost 2 years now, and I wish they weren't graduating. But you know, onward and upward. Excelsior, as they say in New York. Happy to and keep us informed and educated too. We'll follow up with a survey asking for feedback. We have a couple other links too, just to share rapid fire fashion here. Again, speaking of assets, TC faculty Oren Pismoni-Levy and Sandra Schmidt just had a workshop of their own a little while ago, looking more at the curricular level. So that is called, they're focusing specifically on the status of the anti-LGBTQIA policies and curriculum. So that's, if you want to dig deeper, that's a great workshop I just added to the chat. What else could we share here? If you got the letter rating bug and want to dig into details here, the US Department of Ed has proposed to revise Title IX to be less discriminatory. And so that's a very big, broad title of the Higher Ed Act that you hear about a lot. And so the proposed regs are 700 pages, so be warned, but there are fact sheets and summary sheets available. So check out that link we sent over. And so the I don't want to say the battle, but the opportunity to engage has just begun, because you've written letters at the legislative level, but once a bill gets passed into law, they have to write the details and regulations. So that's the job of the US Department of Ed. They have comment period available for 60 days. So you could theoretically do a whole nother letter writing campaign and weigh in on any aspect of that title. So that's there for your reference. And what else do we have here? I think, Joey, is there anything else we want to share besides don't forget to vote?
Did you want to share the NPR link about the other states, or? Yeah,
we could do that. The NPR link shows us, it's from April. It shows us the status of the Don't Say Gay bills. Then there's also a Chalkbeat article I referenced earlier that talks about UCLA study on transgender youth. There's just a lot of good stuff out there, and we'll be a resource for you. You could email me camp@tc.edu. And feel free to follow up. We could get into the nitty-gritty of legislation regulations, but I think we're a little bit over time. So thank you so much. Feel free to follow up over email with anything, and congratulations on the action you took today.
Thank you for having us today.
Again,
Great, thank you.
I look forward to these events. I like, because yeah, they're always,
Oh,
thank you.
Thanks,
spread
Jim.
the
Okay.
word.
Bye, Pamela. Bye, Jonathan. Bye, Joey.
Bye.